back again with another vlog. This is Rick and Morty, Season 3, Episode 9, The ABCs of Beth. So, I think the first thing I want to talk about is actually not the episode itself, but the fact that, as of this recording, the latest news is that Rick and Morty is not coming back for a 4th season. It's not entirely clear what the reason why is, given that, by all appearances, it was quite popular and profitable. However, there were some sexual harassment allegations against people in fairly high positions in the show. I can't remember if it was Harmon or Roiland, but it was one of the two co-creators, possibly even both. And there was also just the various problems with the fandom. The whole Szechuan sauce shenanigans, that kind of thing, that may have put off advertisers, even though the show is popular. There has to be a certain fear after that debacle that if you sponsor an episode of Rick and Morty, or pay for some product placement even, you'll have a riot on your hands. Because, by all appearances, Rick and Morty fans, as a group, not all, obviously, but just kind of the fandom, is pretty heavy on people who use the word sheeple. That kind of person. And they can generally be relied upon to go very quickly and easily into, ironically enough, a herd mentality. Couple that with high levels of entitlement and arrogance, and things get bad. Anyway, let's put that aside and let's talk about this episode. This is a pretty good episode. It's not the best of the season. That's almost definitely the Rick Lantis mix-up. But it's pretty good, and it's continuing to do character work that makes me have mixed feelings about the show being canceled. I like the show, and I like the character work it was doing, especially in the 3rd season. At the same time, it definitely had some serious flaws, and those are highlighted in this episode as well. The biggest one being that this episode is mostly not funny. There's a couple of good gags. The box full of stuff made for Beth that just goes on and on, with increasingly, horrifying things for a small child, that's pretty funny. But most of the episode is relying on this very sophomoric, South Park-esque, oh haha, they said the taboo thing kind of humor. And that just doesn't work for me. I've talked before about the benign violation theory of humor. And one of the implications of that theory is that the two major ways a joke can fail are that it can fail to come across as benign, or it can fail to come across as a violation. And I feel like with the, oh ha ha ha, they said the taboo thing, there's only two ways it can go. Either the thing they said is not something that is really bad to say. It might be a bad thing that they're talking about, but it's not something that's hurtful or harmful to say, in which case it's not really a violation. Or it is something that's hurtful and harmful to say, in which case it's not really benign. Those are really the only two options. Either something is a taboo topic for a good reason, in which case it's not benign, or it's not a good reason, and it's not a violation. So, just saying cannibalism and incest a lot. Yeah, those are both very bad things. But, like, talking about them really isn't. There are ways of talking about incest that could be very hurtful to people who are victims of it, but I feel like probably that's not the case here, given that it is such an absurd and ridiculous thing, and so it's not really a violation. And therefore it's not really funny, it's just kind of boring. You know, it's like when you're in 5th grade and, like, penis is funny. Because it's taboo. But really, it's only taboo because you're 10. It's not really funny. Now, something doesn't have to be taboo to be a violation. It just has to go against what's expected, and what's comfortable. So, like, there are circumstances under which suddenly confronting the word penis can be funny. But that's not really the case here. They don't really, in my opinion, create circumstances where it's funny. I guess it's like the juxtaposition of the very child-friendly environment and the cute, fuzzy yet horrible nature of the creatures juxtaposed with the topic that's supposed to be the violation. Like, these things do not go together. But at this point, you know, cute and kitty and taboo topics aren't really new territory for a cartoon at all. So it doesn't really feel like a violation. It doesn't feel unexpected. It's exactly what you would expect a show like Rick and Morty to do, and that means it's not funny. That said, like I was saying, I do like the character work being done here. In particular, I like that Jerry and Rick are paralleled in this episode. Now, obviously, the obvious thing going on is that Beth and Rick are a lot alike. You know, the refusal to apologize, the high opinions of themselves, the facility with figuring stuff out, the tendency toward violence, a rather frighteningly good ability to cut off caring about a situation or a person. Bouncing back really quickly from things that maybe ought to be a little traumatic. Like, these are all things they have in common. But the actual parallel stories are Rick refuses to apologize to Beth, who rapidly learns how bad of a situation happened, and violence ensues. And Jerry refuses to, take the blame for breaking up with Kiara, and violence ensues. Because Jerry and Rick are both cowards, and that's important. Now, Jerry is a coward about physical danger, but also about emotional hurt. He will run, he will cave instantly. That slug Jerry creature from that one episode where they do marriage counseling, that's exactly it. Jerry just instantly collapses and gives in because he is terrified of any kind of confrontation or hurt. Rick is absolutely, supremely, to the point of arrogance, confident about physical threats and danger. But he always runs from difficult situations. He runs from emotional investment. He runs from his own feelings, and he runs from caring. And that's his cowardice. And that's what the choice Beth is confronted with at the end of this episode, is she is given the opportunity to consequences, utterly free of consequences for other people. She has the opportunity to either stay and face the reality of the life that she has built for herself, good and bad, or run like her dad did. A choice between courage and cowardice. A pure choice between courage and cowardice, because there's no harm coming to anyone else either way. It's entirely her. And we're left with no answers to what she chooses. The problem is that Rick gets that speech to express his view of the world, and Rick often gets to express his view of the world and is a very dominant and large personality, and so it is very easy to lose the fact that this whole episode is about the courage to face your own mistakes. A courage that both Rick and Jerry lack in equal measure. Refusal. They're too cowardly to face that they might have hurt someone and to take responsibility for it. They're too cowardly. In Rick, they deal with it in different ways. Jerry by lying, Rick by shutting down his feeling and his caring. But that's what they're doing. And it's easy to miss that that's what the episode is about, because we get Rick being this very dominant, powerful personality that gets to give these big speeches. And of course, we can go back to Harmon's earlier work in Community, where Jeff constantly gave these speeches that were in fact self-serving garbage. And he was a parody of the whole sitcom, I learned something today kind of a thing, where it would always be, his little speech about what he learned would always be this self-serving garbage that was belied by the events of the episode. The same is true of when Rick gives these kinds of speeches. That's why Pickle Rick is such a great episode. And in fact, you know what? I think that might actually be my favorite of this season. I forgot that was this season. Because somebody else gets to give the speech and gets to actually point out that all of Rick's posturing is just that he is full of self-serving nonsense, that he is, in fact, a broken man, a coward, who is afraid to face things like boredom, interpersonal difficulty, anything that isn't constant entertainment and stimulation and fun and adventure. And so he gets to give this whole speech about how nothing matters and the universe is out to get you, and smart people know this and only dumb people have relationships, and there's a large segment of the audience that is taking that at face value. And that's not necessarily on the show. If your readers, your viewers, whatever, don't get it, then to a degree that's their problem. But there's also just the fact that that's a measure of skill on the part of the creators. Is it as subtle as they want it to be? If they're trying to make a point, then does it come across? That's a legitimate thing to question. And if they're not trying to make a point, but they're making one anyway, is that an outcome that they're okay with? And is it one that they want? Like, you are still responsible for the impact your work has on people, regardless of what your work is. Whether you build bridges or make cartoons, you are responsible for the quality and the impact of your work on the world. And it's tough to say that the world is a better place for having Rick and Morty in it. Despite it being basically a good show. I don't think it does a good enough job of saying that Rick is Archie Bunker. You know, and Archie Bunker had fans too. Archie Bunker had people thinking he was right. But it was still clear. It did not require effort to read All in the Family as being positioned against Archie Bunker's views. Like, that was clearly the positionality. The show did not require a lot of effort to see that. The positionality of Rick and Morty is a lot less clear. I have my read. I think it's against Rick. I have a lot of evidence as I can bring for it to be against Rick. But on the surface level, it's kind of for him. And I feel like a lot of that is trying to have their cake and eat it too. They want the fan base of adult cartoons. They want the Family Guy and South Park fans who basically are watching for poop jokes and a feeling of superiority to the rest of humanity. And they want to make it actually a good show. And those are kind of incompatible. But they're trying to do both, and the result is mixed. Still, you know, it's still up one of the better episodes of a solid season of a show that was overall pretty good. And so I have mixed feelings about it not coming back. Regardless, I think that's about it. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Check out my Patreon for early access to gaming videos, vlogs, essays, and more. And I will see you all next time. Bye!